it was interesting that the colleagues that I connect with on a regular basis were not only just surviving, they were identifying problems and proposing solutions for their entire learning cultures. The phrase that came up over and over again was, "We were the glue."
Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 4 of the Future Ready Librarian podcast series, Leading from the Library. This is a podcast for all librarians, wherever you are in your journey. It is filled with amazing guests, important topics, and engaging conversations that will inspire, engage, and support all of us as future ready librarians. I am your host, Shannon McClintock Miller. I am the district teacher librarian at Van Meter Community School in Van Meter, Iowa, and serve as the Future Ready Librarian spokesperson. I have the pleasure of working within my school and library community, and also others around the country and world through Future Ready Librarian events, conferences, consulting, writing, and more. And I am very honored to bring these voices and all of the work of others to our podcast and to each one of you. Today, I'm very excited, though, as we wrap up Season 4, to welcome my dear friend, Joyce Valenza, to our podcast as we recap the last 2 years and talk about what we can do to celebrate in the world of libraries and education. So welcome to our podcast, Joyce.
Thanks, Shannon. It's great to be here.
I know, I'm so
feels
excited.
Just like our usual chats.
Exactly. I know when I asked Joyce to come on, I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up Season 4 than to invite you to come, because we are always having these great conversations, and I thought that all of you would like to be in on them too.
Okie doke.
I know, I can't wait. So let's just start by having you introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your background and the work that you do.
Okay, thanks, Shannon. I had been a special librarian with the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia at the very beginning of my career. Actually indexed books for University of Pennsylvania Press. I was with the Free Library of Philadelphia for 11 years. And at some point, I decided I wanted to be a school librarian. And so I worked in 2 lovely high schools. I was an elementary librarian for a short while in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. And after 25 years as a school librarian, I was asked to go to Rutgers as a faculty member, and there I am now an associate professor in the LIS program, and I also coordinate the school library program there at Rutgers.
Oh, amazing. I know when I have to tell everybody about my first interaction with Joyce was at a conference when I first became a librarian, and in the fall I heard her speak at a conference and knew at that moment that I had found like who I wanted to be and what I wanted to be like as a librarian. And so Joyce and I go way back to the beginning of my career, and now just watching when you have your students, when I join your classes, and just watching the importance of that mentorship. I think as we talk about things to celebrate, like that's one of the best things about our community, right? In being a librarian is how we just embrace, I think, everyone, and how we want everyone to do just, an amazing job within their library. And that's something that's so important to us.
Yes, Shannon, I think what is very interesting to me is that didn't exist when I entered the field. In the 80s, we really weren't able to connect. We were the one-ofs in our buildings. And while we were writing books that each other could read, it's hard to imagine a time before networks. It's hard to imagine a time before podcasts. It's hard to imagine a time before we could easily get out a tweet, share a link, or a discovery that we've made, or to collaborate globally on books and other such things. It's amazing how far we've come in being able to support and mentor each other. And we take that for granted sometimes, I think.
I know that I think that's one of the neat parts. Like as we go into the summer, I was talking to one of my friends this morning about that on how much it's changed because now we can even stay connected and read what we're reading or share what we're working on. And I think that's one of the neatest things just about our community. And so it's neat to have you on as my first mentor too as we talk about this.
Thanks. And so just imagine how many people you're mentoring with these podcasts and all the other work that you do.
No, that's exciting.
It's pretty wonderful.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I love it. So let's get to the conversation. And I know that you just gave a presentation in Pennsylvania, right, at the conference and spoke around these topics. And so I'm excited for everyone just to hear about the things that you spoke about within your presentation.
Yeah, this has been a very turbulent period, and it also has been a period during which librarians have stood up and taken leadership roles and seized certain opportunities. And so at the talk I was doing, I was calling it Weathering the Storms. I didn't want to focus on the storms, but I did want to focus on how we might weather them. So we can have some conversations around these things, but what I saw happening was, people could consider this sort of thing a perfect storm, but it was interesting that the colleagues that I connect with on a regular basis were not only just surviving, they were identifying problems and proposing solutions for their entire learning cultures. And they were leading in times of real hardship. So COVID was one of those. And what we saw was librarians in some of the research we did in New Jersey, we saw librarians really, the phrase that came up over and over again was, we were the glue. We were ready with, in most cases, we were ready with digital resources. We knew how to create websites. We knew how to communicate digitally with all of our stakeholders. We were distributing not only books and learning how to build our ebook and audiobook and all sorts of digital materials rapidly. We were able to scale that in collaboration with our public library colleagues in many cases. And we were also able to embed ourselves in learning management systems and embed our resources in the learning management systems so classroom teachers could easily access this. And we were helping our classroom teacher colleagues in many cases build their own digital presence. We were communicating with parents. We were setting up websites for parents. And I know you did this and many other people. We were doing book deliveries, physical book deliveries, using our cars and bicycles and delivering to some homes. I saw so many heroic efforts. So all of that right now, templates are in place for us to continue our availability, our ubiquitous access. And I don't think that's going to change. I think there has been this kind of collateral positive that has come out of this. And I also see opportunities for us, where we see the potential for a learning slide or a COVID learning slide. I think this is another area where we can step up and find the solutions, identify the problems. So if assessments are happening this spring or have already happened this spring, talking to administrators about the items on these assessments that our students have the most trouble with. If we learn about those before the next school year starts, we have an opportunity to prepare lessons or to help teachers prepare lessons to address those things and also address them on individual or small group bases with the students who might need more support. I saw efforts to really beef up social and emotional learning, to make connections with kids that we perceived needed us most, and families that we saw needed us most. So, we did some focus groups and we did some surveys, but so much of this is anecdotal. The other opportunity that I see that I don't know has been fully realized is, was this effort really recognized by our administrators? Did we write the right reports, not just the number of books that may have circulated, but these stories that I'm only touching the tip of the iceberg on sharing? Those stories have to be documented and at a local level, because they're really powerful. And I think that evidence is very important to tell the story. And this isn't over. We're telling the story of 2.5 years right now, and potentially more. And so, how do these successes get recognized and documented? So that's one of the things I was talking about in the talk. We had a lot of examples of this. We're certainly dealing with book bans, and we're recognizing there have been a number of recent articles that some of the people who are looking at banning books in our schools are also looking at our digital resources and our databases, and these are, of course, we're in some ways very transparent, and also in some ways very vulnerable, because our collections are quite open to the general public. So we're seeing this, and this is a big deal. These are organized efforts by large groups of people, not necessarily local parents, and certainly not all of our parents. I mean, I think one of the things we have to recognize is that we love our parents, and
Yes.
they have been supportive to us through our whole careers, and so we want to figure out how to address these situations in positive ways and effective ways, while we defend the rights of all children to access the books. That one family shouldn't deter or inhibit the rights of other people in our communities from reading. And so we've seen really important models. Last week we saw a letter from 1,300 or so award-winning authors to the community, talking about the damages that can be done when books are banned. We saw parents, so there's so many powerful videos of parents speaking up at school board meetings on behalf of their own child's right to read. We've seen really courageous librarians, and I don't know that everybody, and I tell my students, I want them to stand up for our core values, and I want them to stand up for the right to read. And I also am concerned about their safety as non-tenured or untenured new librarians. But happily, we have the support of the Office for Intellectual Freedom, and we have the support of all these documents that have been out there that offer us material selection models. And we have strong mentorship in some of the people who are in a position where they can really speak up and lead. So in Texas, we have the Freedom Movement that has been nationally recognized and really powerful. We have Becky and Carolyn and Nancy Joe, who just won an Intellectual Freedom Award, I read. These are extraordinary models. And one of the things I'm also seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing it too, is that because of the teaching we've done, our kids are aware of what intellectual freedom looks like. They're also thinking critically about how they can behave as citizens. And so when they feel that their freedoms are encroached upon, I am seeing kids gather together and speak up at school board meetings. Some of the resources that I see in New Jersey really helped kids get together understand how to make an impactful statement at a school board meeting. So Martha Hickson, for instance, put together these, and I know you've interviewed her in a podcast. She put together materials, and so did other members of her advisory board. Among the things that were in there is, when you speak at a board meeting, you get up, you make sure you practiced and researched your talk, but you thank the school board for their volunteer service. You are polite. You present evidence, and these students dug deeply into reviews and award lists and statements about their own rights. Presented an argument, 3-minute argument, in a way that they didn't actually say this, but what I saw was educators, especially librarians, have given them the skills that they needed to speak up as adults, to speak up for their own rights. And so I see hope in this. I see the tide turning. I see movements, going on both sides. And I hope that we have conversations that allow, communities to mend. So anyway, that has been a storm, and it's also been in some ways a celebration, understanding that our rights can be fragile and that we need to take action. We need policies in place. We need to know that our school boards and administrators understand the policies and are behind us. So these conversations have been scary, damaging, and also healthy in terms that we've taken some leadership. And in some cases, I see tides turning, and I see the entire organization of the American Library Association stepping up and building additional supports. There's this, we're living in what the World Health Organization calls an infodemic. There was misinformation, disinformation, malinformation out there relating to all sorts of things, including the pandemic. And we're in the midst of a global crisis and potentially global war. And this is terrifying. And I see that this, our efforts in information literacy have never been needed more. I want our kids to recognize that we evaluate sources not by staying inside the source and looking it closely, but to see where it sits in the context of other pieces of information. That information comes in so many on so many platforms and in so many formats, and I think that as educators over the last 20 years, in some ways we've demonized information. If we've done some source shaming, I think that one of the forward-thinking documents, in addition to our own standards, is the ACRL framework, which tells us that there is a contextual nature to information. It's not just content, it's context. And there are moments in students' inquiry efforts that tweets make so much more sense than anything else. In fact, way back in Arab Spring, my kids discovered a student who was their age in Egypt with whom they were talking about the uprising, and they learned so much more than they could have from the newspapers or any of the media out there. And we're seeing that today in terms of what's happening in Ukraine. We're seeing propaganda going on both sides. But I was sharing with you the other day how I was digging in with my students into the Russian propaganda machine. And we were seeing some really powerful stuff coming out there. There is this cartoon that I know is shown widely to elementary students in Russia, portraying Ukraine as the aggressor in the war, using children with T-shirts representing Ukraine, Russia, and the United States, and portraying the United States and Ukraine as the bullies. And this sort of thing is powerful propaganda. Having our own students look at material like that could be really powerful. And yet when I see us using examples like the kinds of hoax websites that we were using years ago, I don't know why anybody would do that when we have so many authentic examples of what misinformation looks like. And also, there is also the opportunity to do all sorts of authentic examinations. For instance, if we're looking at Wikipedia articles, we can look at Wikipedia articles written in Russian and translate them into English and see what message on the same topic is being presented by two different perspectives or many different perspectives. We can curate news sources, so students are not only reading the one news source or the one media outlet that perhaps their parents watch, but so they can look at Pravda as a print, as a digital source or DOS, and they can look at Radio Free Europe. There's so many options they're not the first options that pop into a kid's mind, but they're like really, they open new worlds of what information might look like. And there's also this, like, the excitement in types of sources that we've also shamed, like Wikipedia, for instance. Mm-hmm. During the pandemic, scientists were vetting the information on the disease that was coming into Wikipedia and using it as a hub for their own research. And so there's been if we look at Wikipedia articles on the article level rather than the whole notion of it's Wikipedia, it stinks, it's more like, when do we use Wikipedia and how we use it rather than whether to use it or not. It is a given, and it has great value. And with the addition a couple of years back of controlled digital lending, it not only has links to articles, but it has links to all the books Internet Archive has digitized that are available on controlled digital lending. So when you're doing a project on Alexander Hamilton, for instance, you're not only getting the kind of tertiary source that's Wikipedia, but if you go into the sources, you're getting the Chernow book on which the musical was based. So you're getting a full chunky biography of Hamilton, reading the 3 pages into which the particular little piece of fact that you're looking for was written. You're actually looking at it in the context of the book immediately. I'm sorry, I've been babbling a lot.
No, I love that. I've been taking so many notes, and I'm sure all the listeners are too. I just saw Hamilton last week, and so I've been reading a lot about just his life and his wife's life as well. And so I didn't know that. So I'm so glad that you shared that.
Thank you. Thank you. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about. What else should we talk about?
I love that, though. I think this is such, today when I'm on summer break already. And so, you always think about all these things that you want to do in the summer. You don't have kids, like, what do you want to work on? And so I have all these projects all over my desk. And this year, it just feels different. It feels like we all need kind of time to reflect and kind of a break. Like, I feel like that we have never felt before. And so I love these topics that you bring up because they are big things that we all need to think about. And they're things that we want to make sure that we go back in the fall and that we are not only addressing, but there's so many different things now on how we do things, how we embed ourselves, how we get information to our students, how we interact with our families. We think about book bans and all of the things that are going on within our world. And there's a lot. And so bringing these things to mind, at the beginning of our summer is a great thing because we have time to really kind of dig in ourselves and just reflect and think about these and to celebrate the things that we can do as librarians. You said in the beginning, I love the term embedded librarian because I think that really, more so than ever, really encompasses like what we do as librarians and all the ways that we can connect.
Yeah, I think we've set up some pretty impressive kind of digital infrastructure that has connected schools in ways that we weren't previously connected. We had to do it in a hurry, but we've set some avenues out for communication that we didn't have before. And so that's pretty lovely. I think that, over the summer, we all deserve a big break. And I was, when I started talking to you about what we should talk about today, I mentioned that I've been pretty addicted to Ted Lasso. And I was, I saw there was a feature on CBS's Sunday Morning about it, and the character of Rebecca, and I will look up the name of the actress because I don't remember it immediately, but they asked her why the show was so successful, and as everybody says about that show, it's not really about soccer. It's about good people doing good things. It's about kindness. And she felt that during the pandemic, it presented one big hug. And I felt that way as I watched that show, but I was also thinking about our friends who have worked doubly hard over these last 2 years and continue to. And I suspect that even though we might be taking a break over the summer, we'll be adding to our websites, and we'll be looking for new books among the rich new books that are being published. And that's a celebration, seeing new diversity in the books and the languages, and books that welcome new neighbors to our country and all of that. But I also think that in addition to all the prep work we do, I mean, if we can end this talk with a big hug and a big thank you to our colleagues who have been absolutely extraordinary over these last 2.5 years, and who continue those efforts in holding schools together, in helping families, in identifying children who have needs that everybody might not pick up. These are heroic efforts, and I if I could really hug everybody, including my students who are newly out there, I would do that. And I want to hug you, my dear friend, for pulling this together and for giving so many gifts out there to the profession.
Thank you. I think that's the perfect way to end the conversation. And when Joyce told me about, she had shown me the clip, and we'll make sure to include that in the notes also from the podcast, because it's a great interview. And I love that, because I think that's where we need to just end our school year into the summer and just remember that we're part of this great community, and we're super lucky to be part of that. Think of all the gifts that we have.
Thanks. I will share the link to the presentation if that helps also.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
And I want to also shout out to Future Ready, who have, just sponsored all of this great stuff, the webinars, blog, the templates, the website, and just reaching across the educational community, because sometimes we only talk to ourselves. And I love that Future Ready is a network of educators of all sorts.
Yeah. Yes, me too. I know we're super blessed to have so many great voices, and it's going to be another great year next year. And so I really since this is the last one too of season 4 and we're going into the summer, just want to tell everybody to enjoy your summer and take time for yourselves. And like Joyce said, think of all the things that Joyce has shared with us today and that we've learned together through Future Ready, because I think that's The really neat thing about the community that we have. When I became a librarian, well, almost 20 years ago, I think it's 16 years this year. And I think about being with you in the fall, like I left that feeling that way. And so I want everybody to feel that way too.
Love you, honey.
I love you too, honey. So you guys, this was so great. I can't think of a better way just to wrap up season 4 and to wrap up the work that we've done around our Future Ready Librarian podcast and all the great things that we have had. And we're going to just remember, we'll share all of the resources, and we're also going to share Joyce's information. But Joyce, maybe you can tell people where to find you online.
Well, you can follow me at Joyce Valenza on Twitter. I haven't been as active as I used to be, but I will be starting in the summer. And my blog is on hiatus right now. I'm taking a little break from that. So email me, joycevalenza@gmail.com, or follow me on Twitter.
Great. That will be awesome. And you'll also be able to find a certificate of professional development that you can download and fill out to use as well. As always, thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for this episode of the Future Ready Librarian podcast series, Leading from the Library. And a very special thank you to our sponsors, Follett. You make a difference in our libraries, schools, and within our lives, and that of our students every day. We appreciate everything that you do. I hope you can take what you learned in today's podcast and in season 4 and put it to use within your practice as a Future Ready librarian. Until next time, friends, keep finding ways to lead within and from your library.